people are being hailed as the front runners in this vaccine. There's a team at Oxford here, not far from where I am now, that put it in some monkeys, I think, and they were thinking as the front runners, and everyone's cheering them on and and heralding them as the ones that are going to solve our problems, but they're potentially going to put something in us that is extremely ineffective and potentially dangerous. And you think with the ultimate agenda to get us to be slaves to the pharmaceutical industry? Why are they doing this?
Well, I think there's multiple agendas here, and I just want to make a comment about that particular study that's going on over at Oxford. Is that what they're using in the placebo arm is a meningitis vaccine. So they're comparing their new fangled vaccine that they've made from monkey cells to a meningitis vaccine. So where's the placebo safety study in that?
Why don't they do placebos? Is it because it's considered unethical because you have to treat those patients with something? But why don't they do it?
That's right, because they feel like that, you're going to be subjecting people to medical care and you're going to be subjecting them to injections. And so how could you possibly not give them something that could potentially be a benefit to them? They've been doing that since the polio trials in the 1950s. In fact, there was an arm of some of the polio trials here in the US that they said, well, we've got to give them something. And so what the placebo was a tetanus shot. So, so how do you say that that was safe when you aren't testing it against something that's inert? You can't. And so this has been going on for a really long time, really, really long time. And what's coming out now with these new vaccines, these new messenger RNA, these new RNA vaccines that are coming for this virus, they've never been able to do this before, Brian, never. I mean, at the highest level of, when you look at viruses, at the highest level, you can divide them into two categories. There's a DNA virus and an RNA virus, and that's about the genetics of the virus. So if this is a virus, it's about the genetics. It's about what's inside of here. And we have a couple of RNA vaccines already. We have measles as an RNA virus, and polio as an RNA virus. The difference is those viruses are weakened and the entire virus is injected. And so it's a different type of process that happens in your immune system. With this new SARS-CoV-2 virus vaccine that they want to make, they're taking the RNA out of the middle of the virus and they're just injecting that little piece, which is a foreign protein, which then uses our own enzymes called reverse transcriptase to start replicating that over and over again inside of our bodies, that we're supposed to create an antibody to that thing that's inside of our body. And when they've done this, when they've tested this on animals in the past, because coronaviruses have been around for 60 years, 60. There's 32 different types of coronaviruses that they've identified. Some of them are in animals. There's 4 for sure that routinely infect human beings. And those 4 coronaviruses cause up to 40% of influenza-like illness every year all around the globe. So there's 4 really common coronaviruses. And then there's 3 viruses that have been epidemic related. There's the SARS one in 2002. Then there was MERS that was in Saudi Arabia, I think in 2003 or 4. And now this new SARS-CoV-2, because they call it SARS-CoV-2 because it's very similar to the SARS virus from 2002. And so there's 7 viruses altogether that can cause coronaviruses that can cause infection. So they've been trying to develop a vaccine against coronaviruses for at least 20 years because it causes a large burden of illness. And if you're a vaccine manufacturer, that's what you want to try to prevent with, or you think you're trying to prevent with your vaccines. But every time they've done that, and they've done in the animal studies, the animals end up with something called accelerated hyperimmunity. It's called through something called a paradoxical immune reaction. So you get the vaccine and it doesn't develop the right kind of antibody. It creates an antibody that starts to attack your organs. And when they sacrifice the animals and see what's happening inside of those animals, the animals have an accelerated autoimmune disease, and either and some of the animals flat out died, and some of the animals they sacrificed and found this autoimmune disease. Now, what's interesting about that scientific process is that really wasn't caused by the vaccine. The vaccine went into the animal, they had a really high antibody response, and they said, yes, that's what we're looking for, a really high antibody response. Now, let's re-expose those animals to the virus and see if that antibody keeps them from getting sick, because isn't that protective antibody what it's supposed to do? Well, every time they re-expose them to the virus they're trying to develop an antibody against, that's when the accelerated autoimmune process happened. It wasn't the vaccine itself. It was the re-exposure to the pathogen. And that's what makes the vaccine even more dangerous. In fact, one of the more recent studies that I just read a couple nights ago was from 2012. So that's pretty recent. And the conclusion of that study said, much care and caution should be used in trying to create a coronavirus vaccine for human beings. Last sentence in the study, in the abstract of the study, says we must really be careful about this. And that's, in my opinion, why some of the minions of pro-vaccine people like Paul Offit and Paul Offit and Peter Hotez, who are like the poster children for the pro-vaccine spokespersons, they're even saying, when I first heard them saying, we got to really be cautious about this. There's some really problems with developing coronavirus vaccines. I thought that maybe they'd seen the light, that suddenly they were like going to be anti-vaccine people or something. I was like, what happened that they're saying that? Well, then I started reading the medical literature and say, well, they know the medical literature, and it says they need to exercise great caution because this is not going to work. It kills or greatly injures experimental animals. And nonetheless, it's full steam ahead. 6 to 18 months, we're going to have one of these for the world.